Hello, friends. I'm Kush Kandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Hi, friends. This week on Ageless Athlete, we travel to the heart of Yosemite Valley to meet Nick Martinez, a climber whose life has been a tapestry woven with thrilling adventures, devastating losses, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Nick's journey began thousands of miles away in the sprawling city of Londrina, Brazil. Growing up, he was captivated by the climbing culture of Yosemite, poring over magazines and endlessly replaying the VHS tapes, mesmerized by Dean Spotter's speed solo of the nose. In 2004, a quick 2 week trip to Yosemite turned into 8 months. Nick immersed himself in the Yosemite lifestyle, befriending legends like Dean Potter and the Human Brothers, learning the art of big wall climbing and embracing the dirtbag ethos. Nick quickly rose through the ranks, taking off classic El Cap routes with a tenacity and drive that set him apart. He soloed Mescalito for his first El Cap ascent, then stacked up demanding aid lines like Sea of Dreams and Zenyatta Mondata, routes once considered the most challenging in the world. He even spent 16 grueling days alone on the radically steep Tempest, a route with the potential for 100-foot falls. Nick was not afraid to push his limits, drawn to the intense focus and self reliance demanded by solo aid climbing. But Nick's path has not been solely paved with triumph. He's experienced the profound heartbreak of losing his wife Allison in a base jumping accident, and then witnessed the deaths of many close friends in the community. In 2015, tragedy struck again when Nick survived his own near fatal base jumping fall, leaving him with lasting physical and emotional scars. Despite these unimaginable losses, Nick has found a way to keep climbing, seeking solace, and healing in the mountains. Nick shares his raw, remarkable journey. You will be moved by his honesty, inspired by his courage, and reminded that even amidst the darkest shadows, there is always a path forward. Friends, just take a moment, if you have been with me so far, to leave a quick review on Apple Podcast or just click the star rating on Spotify. It only takes 30 seconds. Whip out your phone right now, open the app, and just click and add that review. I am so grateful. All right, let's roll with Nick. Hey, Nick. Great to have you on Ageless Athlete. To start off with, please tell us, where are you right now? Where are you from? What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Hey, Kush. Nice talking to you here on the podcast. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Nicola Martinez. I'm originally from Brazil, but I have countless passports now. My grandparents were born in Spain, so I have an EU passport, and I was married to an American lady, and yeah, born in Brazil.
Where are you right now?
I am in El Portal, California, at my friend's house. My friend Heather, she's a local. She's lived here for over 30 years now. She's letting me just do the podcast here. But yeah, I've been back from South America where I was visiting my family For breakfast, I think I had what did I have? Some type of scrambled eggs. I was pretty hungry, and a smoothie.
That sounds tasty. You were telling me right before we got started that you had finished doing Astroman late last night, and knowing the climb and knowing the descent and knowing all the adventure that you had, I'm sure you worked up a good appetite for today. So I'm glad you are fueled up. So Nick, tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
I'm just another guy living on planet Earth. I happened to start climbing when I was 17 back in Brazil. My main fuel before going climbing was to watch this Masters of Stone video. We used to import the VHS tapes. It was pre-internet. That's when I found out about Dean Potter, Dan Osmond, all the big names, like the Valley scene. And at the time, I didn't really have the money, to afford a trip to Yosemite. So I said, yeah, I'm going to make it happen. I just need to at least visit this place once in my life. So when I was 19, I moved to Europe. I had some friends living in the UK, in London. So I went there, spent about year and a half, and doing odd jobs. Then I moved to the Dolomites. I had a little bit more fun there, because of living in a mountain town, making friends, learning a new language. And I got a job at a mountain hut where I spent 3 months that season working in the kitchen, helping out. And I made so many friends, and I had a blast, So after Europe, quick story, we'll go back to it. But I decided I had the money, I had the time. So I took a trip to the US to visit some friends here, some friends in Canada, some friends in the US on the East Coast. I told myself that at the end of my trip, I was going to go to Yosemite and spend 2 weeks in the valley. I had a set of cams, a set of nuts, one rope, not enough to climb anything that I climbed that season. So I had money and time to be here for 2 weeks, and I ended up staying in the valley for 8 months that season. That happened in 2004.
You 2 weeks turned into 8 months, which now have turned into 20 years. Yeah. You're still in the valley.
20 years. I arrived here April 11th, I think. I remember the day I got here. I was mesmerized, and it's oh my God, I'm here, and I ended up meeting the right people, and all those people that I used to watch on the videos, my climbing heroes, they ended up becoming my close friends, and Dean Potter being one of them. Yeah, we had a lot of fun, good run, and he showed me how to base jump. Took me on my very first jump, terminal jump. Can't really tell where, but you probably all know.
Nick, yes, you dropped some interesting breadcrumbs there. Want to get back to them, but going back to your roots, you are
yeah,
I am an immigrant like you are. You came here in 2004. I came here from India in 99.
Yeah.
And one thing growing up, I was fascinated by Brazil, mostly because I used to watch a lot of soccer. I was a very bad soccer player, but soccer was all over the Indian TV networks, and loved watching Brazilian stars. When it comes to sports, Brazil is legendary for soccer. I want to ask you, what was your background in sports? How did you get into climbing? And I also want to ask you, where does climbing fit into the world that you grew up in a soccer mad country, or in a country where maybe adventure sports were not as huge as they have evolved to be today.
Yeah. The climbing in Brazil, like I think as in any other country, it developed a lot, with internet and accessibility to climbing gyms and films and all that type of stuff. I've always done really bad at other sports, volleyball, basketball. I don't know. I wasn't like quite fitting in with the crowd at school. I started skateboarding, and that was something I really liked. I used to just ride bikes, Used to play soccer with my friends at the street I grew up. Like it's just we're all like a small group of kids growing together. So it was more like for the running and the activity, not just for the soccer. And it's not that I was really interested on that. And skateboarding, it caught my attention for a while, from 14 to 16. And that's when I found climbing. A friend of mine showed me like a climbing wall that someone's set it up. That's where it all started back in Brazil. So life for me, I've taken other directions after a couple of years in Yosemite. That's when I started base jumping, but it's still like a big part of my life. I've never really like tried to or trained to become like, okay, an expert at big wall climbing, at hard aid climbing. I was super psyched, and I was making very little money, and all I wanted is just to spend time up on the walls. So that's how it fits into my life. It's just my lifestyle. My friends from Brazil know me as a climber. I've accomplished, I feel like, a few things over the years, and I feel like at 45, am I 45, 46? Forget.
With your upbringing in Brazil, one quick question I wanted to ask is,
Uh-huh.
before we met, you shared with me a video that you said you had made for your family and friend in back home.
Yep.
Does
Mhm.
your family, your friends, your community understand what you do and your sport?
I've always got a lot of support from my family. Part of my family, some of my uncles thought I was crazy what I was doing with my life. If I wasn't gonna save up some money and have a family and do the regular thing. And I said like that, I just want to live. Right now I'm 19, 20. I just want to live every day to the fullest. And I feel like I'm still doing it. I made this little video to show my family and friends like that, and also raise some funds to the local cancer hospital. Uh, and my mom stayed at that hospital in like for years, not full time, but she got treatment there. So I thought it would be like a good way to give it back. And that's it. I don't like try to make money with climbing. I have like other sources of income. So it was just like a good opportunity to meet new people and just get connected with the local climbing community, some people that I don't even know, newer climbers, and just show them what I learned over the years with my experiences here in Yosemite and kind of all over the world.
Yeah, that sounds like a great way to give back, to be able to not only share your love and passion for the sport, inspire other people in Brazil, but also to raise funds for a cause that is
Yeah.
important to you. Moving forward a little bit, talk to us how you got drawn to aid climbing. I'm sure you do different kinds of climbing. One of the styles of climbing you're well known for. Actually, to start off with, maybe explain to the average person what is aid climbing? How is it different than other kinds of climbing?
Yeah, with aid climbing, you're using artificial ways, like you're using this like really small pieces of gear. It depends. It can be a bolt ladder, which is like really safe, that some of the even the free routes to connect the pieces, sometimes you have to do like some A0, or they say it's 512C, which is like out of my climbing range, or A1. So we use those means to connect both, you know, to be able to climb those things, because I'm not a 513 climber. So I use that to get up walls whenever I can free climb up to my climbing range. I do, but like the proper like ape climbing that a lot of people use on the southeast face of El Cap, on a lot of El Cap, is to just you use this like it's just like a whole different sport. And the ratings go from A0, which it can be like safe, bolt to bolt, to A5. That if you fall, you're risking ripping your whole pitch. I'm lucky that I fall on some like A4 pitches, and but gear seems like to always hold me, like my skinny frame. So yeah, I showed up in Yosemite. I met this guy Dave Turner, who was like soloing a lot of walls. We became really close, really good friends, and he showed me he showed me the ropes. I already knew about and read a lot of like the literature of free climbing, on like reading books on how to climb, like basic techniques. I already knew some of that, but I never really had the money to buy the gear in Brazil, because gear was like the import tax down there is like ridiculous, like whatever we pay here, you just put four times more to have like one cam. So with what people make, it's really hard if you're not like super wealthy, which I wasn't at the time, like growing up. Uh yeah, I was like really struggling, but I knew, like if I went to Europe, I was gonna have like better opportunities to make my dream come true. And I was like 19. My dad could have said like, "No, you're too young," but like he said like, "Whatever, you do whatever you want. I just want you to finish high school."
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode. I wanted to ask you is what did you want to be as a grown up? When you were a kid growing up in Brazil, what did you dream of doing?
It's a weird thing, but I never really had like anything that I said like, I wanna do this, I wanna do that. I never really like that was never a question in my head, because I feel like even like growing up, when like your parents start like asking you, it's like, I don't know, I'm not there yet. I'll find out when I get there, when I get to university. And that's why I feel like I'm just like letting myself be whoever or whatever I am, just changing a little bit the pattern of the conversation. I was thinking like about before we started the podcast that I was always like a super adventurous kid. I used to like dive off like big diving boards. I think that's how base jumping came so naturally
Mm,
to me.
mm.
And that's I used to do like as a 5 year old, like used to go to the big diving board when I was 11. I should have been dead so many times. We were like at a bridge in Brazil, and like we were all picnicking. My parents were on the river shore, and there was like a massive bridge. I think it was like a 30-plus-foot bridge. I climbed up there without checking how deep the water was. I know it was deep, you
Yeah,
know? It's probably like 11, 10 or
yeah.
11. And my parents were like there. I just said, okay, he's like going again or just doing like a crazy thing. I used to do that off the diving board at a swimming pool. So I think like they didn't really think that'd be like a bad
Mhm.
thing. So I hit the bottom of the river and it started floating like a dead body. My dad jumps in the river, picks me up. I just got a concussion.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's just like one of the stories, you know. And I have a few of them to tell you over the course of the show.
Sure.
But today it's the 9th year anniversary that I
Mm.
crashed. I was also thinking about it on my base jumping accident that almost costed my life, and that was my very last jump. From there on, I decided to, I just told myself like, you lost way too many people. You jumped for also like 9, 10 years of your life. You've seen a lot, you know. Got to see the good in sport, got to see the bad, and the bad we all knew, you know, when it happened. It wasn't just like, oh, he broke a leg. It was always a fatality, or most of the time. So, one of the things I learned a lot over the course of my life, it was just like dealing with death, you know, which it was started from my like losing my mom when I was 16, and mom died to cancer in 97. I wasn't really attached to anything anymore. I love my family, but they weren't like opposed to me traveling and following my passions. So I've always done it, and I'm still here to tell the tale.
Nick, going back to that story of you jumping off that board, and sounds like yeah, you were adventurous, and you liked trying new things. You were not fond of mainstream sports. Actually, I sucked at mainstream sports myself. So when I found climbing as a kid, I did some backpacking in the Himalayas with my family. So that's kind of what gave me the love for being outside.
Nice.
And yeah, it bit me pretty hard. So, but the funny thing is, when I went climbing with some school kids, I was 11 as part of a camp. I really sucked at it. Like I was the second
Hmm.
worst kid in the group. Like I did not ever think I had a future with this sport, but somehow I came back. But sounds like when you went climbing at 16 or something like that, it sounded like something clicked. Your friend took you to the climbing wall. Was it like that? Was it like, oh my God, like this is perfect for me? Were you natural when you got on the wall? Were you like, oh, this is exactly what I've been trying to do all my life?
No, it was just like another thing that I tried, and I don't think I did really well the first couple of times I went back to the wall. I didn't do good at all. I was like scared of the height, and I was looking down, and I'm like,
Mm,
I don't know if this is for me, but I kept like pursuing, you know, like I knew that there was something in there that I just had to try more and more, and it's just like it just became a natural a natural thing. But like I wasn't a natural at
sure.
first, you know. I was pretty scared and just didn't do good.
Yeah, no, I think it's
Yeah.
another one of those things where if one is not good at something, but one has a good time doing it or feels some spark than just over practice and love for the sport, you
Right.
can kind of become really, really good. Fast forwarding a few years, so now you land up in Yosemite Valley. You have a small rack, not enough to climb El Cap, and you showed up for 2 months, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and you ended up staying for much longer. You ended up meeting your heroes, right, and ended up climbing with them. One particular person I
Hmm.
wanted to ask you is, you started climbing with Dean Potter, and Dean Potter, he's iconic, right? He's even bigger of a legend
Right.
now that he's no longer with us in some ways. I'm curious, why did somebody like Dean Potter, who could have probably, I don't know, found many other, young prodigies to climb with him, why did he take an interest in climbing with you and making you his protege?
Yeah, with Dean and the climbing, I think Dean was always like a pretty reserved guy, type of guy that he also wanted to be seen, not just like this climbing hero. He just wanted to be seen as a regular guy, you know? So I feel like whenever people treated like that, and it wasn't like, oh, the fan, like, oh my God, you know? Like later on, after like years after we met, I told him, like, we were both around the fire, had like a few drinks, and I told him, like, look, like, he used to be my climbing hero. Do you want to hear the story behind it? And I told him, you know, I just said that I used to watch all these films and knew a lot about who he was, you know, and all his accomplishments. But I was never like the type of guy that was like, oh my God, give me your autograph or something, which there's a lot of people doing that and like really try hard to become these people's friends. I just didn't try.
Mm.
I just was here, and whenever I happened to be at the right place at the right time, especially with him, first time he soloed this route at Glacier Point, Heaven. I was hanging out at his place with that Eric Perlman, and which is the guy that made all the Masters of Stone, and Dean
Mhm.
Feidelman, and it was just the three of us plus Dean. I never like tried to get invited. I just happened to be there at the time and to support him on his these great solos he accomplished, especially that year, you know. And I feel like there was like an energy thing more than like, oh, you do you climb like, as much as I climb, or he wasn't like that type of guy. He was like always like about people's energy, and I feel like our energy connected the same way Stanley, that like
Mhm.
Sean Leary,
Yep.
that was like a big part of the
Mhm.
Valley scene. He was also dating my one of my really good friends from
Mhm.
Brazil before
Mhm.
she died, you know. So yeah, it's just like during the show, I don't want to really like people to feel like that I'm a Debbie Downer, because like you're gonna hear a lot of like the death word, which is like a big part of my life. I, I like to joke around and say like I probably have like more dead friends than friends that are living, right? But yeah, it's just like I try to talk about it with ease and learn. You know, we're all here on this planet learning, and like we have all have our path. You know, so I just don't feel bad about like talking about it
Thank you for
in an
being
open way.
so candid. And absolutely, I mean, I think it is wrong to deny the fact that some of the more extreme ends of our sport have had more risk and more fatalities. It's just part of what it is. I have lost a few people I know, not like you, but I've lost a few people like that I know, and I really had to reevaluate, like almost clinically, my attraction to, let's say, traditional climbing and climbing in the backcountry, because
Hmm.
yes, it was that calculus between how much love do I have for, doing, let's say, stuff in backcountry Tuolumne and places where I know I've had friends who have died doing those things. And I really
Hmm.
thought that maybe the calculus is, if you love something enough, I think if you love something enough, then it justifies it. And I think for me personally, at least
That.
at that time, maybe I may have another season, doing some crazy stuff, but I didn't feel like I had enough love for, let's say, backcountry adventure alpine climbing that that
Hmm.
has claimed people I know. I I love, maybe, let's say, safer kinds of climbing more, more, let's say, mainstream track climbing or just sport climbing or whatnot. So again, sorry, going back to you, yeah, I think if you love something enough, it is worth it. And yeah, whatever. So you start climbing with some of the valley grades. These are your dreams, maybe in a way coming true. You ended up
Hmm.
specializing, or in a way, you spent a lot of time on El Cap. Multiple day ascents, and you were doing maybe more obscure aid lines. I remember reading that they were,
Yep.
I think it was the porcelain wall or some other wall where you did like a, I don't know, like a multi day ascent. And I think at some point you were like, you know what, this is too
Yeah.
dangerous. So tell us about what was that boundary for you where you felt like, this is how hard I want to push it with climbing, and this is
Hmm.
where I draw the line, perhaps, and I will not try this kind of climbing or this extreme kind of effort. Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
Yeah, it's funny because my first year here, I went from climbing basically A zeros. I my first year was a bolt ladder at LeConte Boulder, where King Gary is, and there's that bolt ladder where a lot of people learn. And I just got my systems dialed there, and I went to this friend of mine I met. Uh, he was going to Washington Column to climb a bunch of different routes, and I said like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the South Face." So I knew the solo systems. Uh, with the little bit of gear I had, I put a rack together. Some people let me borrow some stuff, and I went there. And the third big wall I've ever climbed, it was Mescalito on El Cap. It was like a moderate route where I said like, I still don't have a portal edge, but people kept helping me with gear, with whatever they could help me. They knew I was like devoted to this place. I wasn't gonna live. It's like, this is. I told them like, this is my place. This is what I want to do. I feel like with like that season, I think I climbed like 8 routes total here in Yosemite. Like 6 of them being El Cap routes. So like just the year of 2004, I went from like climbing A0 to climb like Sea of Dreams, soloing Zenyatta. There's still like a reputation to
Yep,
that
yep.
route. It was put up by Jim Bridwell and his friends. And like that same year, I ended up like making friends with Jim Bridwell, to the point that like right before I went up to climb Sea of Dreams with my friend Scotty, I was hanging out in the meadow and Jim was there and he was like sharing stories from the first ascent. Like how cool is that? Like
This is crazy. So for people who don't know, Bridwell is, it doesn't get more legendary when it comes to climbing in El Cap.
it even more. I feel like with the porcelain wall, it was a route that I read on Climbing Magazine, and Eric Cole was on the front cover of the route. My friend Dave Turner said like, "Oh, I'm gonna climb, like put up a new line on the porcelain. You want to come?" Like I was like looking at the wall. What should I climb? And I remembered that like reading the article on that route, and I feel like since they put up the route, no one has ever been up there to repeat it. So it's like, oh, that's probably like an interesting thing, like a route that's now really well traveled. Let's go up there and and check it out. Like get scared. And the route's like rated A5. That's the highest grade innate climbing can get. There are a few like A4s. I don't really feel like I
Could you just quickly also add why is A5, what makes A5 the most cutting edge or the hardest kind of A climbing?
because you use body weight placements to ascend. It's not like that you're using a bolt. So like you place a link of this tiny gear type gear that's like can consist on copper heads, hooks, small cams. Sometimes like the cracks open up, or you might like get a good crack system. But mostly of the hard aid climbs are just like it's a link of really body weight placements that you build, and sometimes you build it for 20 meters. The potential risk of fall, it's probably going to be like 40, because everything you place, it's probably not going to hold. So you're tinkering with a lot of and fiddling with a lot of like this small thing. It's just like I feel like it's a completely different sport when you compare it to free climbing. Even like track climbing. Sometimes you have like big run outs. That's the closest I can think. But there's the potential of falls on these climbs are big. So, but like I really like learned how to manage risk, on these type of climbs, and I feel like that's why I also chose to go up there on most of these routes on my own, because I didn't want to like put any of my friends in unnecessary risks. So it's just like I was good with the system, and I had the time to spend up there. It's not that I was like, oh, I need to be down because I need to go to work or do this. I had climbing was my life. So for me, it was better to spend up time up there than just avoiding the rangers down here in the valley floor. So I said, like, if I have water for 20 days, I'll hang out up there for 20 days.
Yeah, you were on. Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I never really like gave up on climbing or said like, oh, this is like too much risk I'm taking. Even if you look at my whole progression, I progressed like within 2 years, going from climbing like A0 to climbing A5 solo. And then I said like, what else? What am I gonna do? I've always liked the like to free climb. I was never much of like a boulder or sport climber, but I've always liked to do like moderates, like long routes everywhere. That was like always my thing. And then like I went from like just accomplishing all this crazy big walls here in Yosemite to going like picking up base jumping, which is like it's an even riskier type of activity. So I feel like I'm like, oh, what am I doing now? So I'm like, let's start over and learn something new. And I knew Dean was jumping a lot, and I was like a part after Dean.
Hey, small thing I want to ask you about while we're on the topic of aid climbing and you're out there pushing the absolute limits with aid climbing is you also climbed with Ammon McNeely, the El
I
Cap
climb.
pirate, so to speak. So one is I want to ask you, yes, how was it climbing with Ammon? Was he as extreme as people seem to think he is? And there is also some crazy story that I heard where Ammon had a prosthetic leg that he dropped on the valley floor,
Yep.
and you were sent down to retrieve his prosthetic leg. So,
His leg.
sorry, I'm going to ask you to share that story and talk about how badass Ammon was
About
when it
Ammon.
came to El Cap.
Once I started like doing these harder 8 lines, and I've always taken my time just to fiddle with gear on A5, A4 plus pitches. Ammon was the type of person that he had like a whole different mentality. He was climbing a lot with like Brian McRae, doing this crazy like A5, maybe like second ascents and breaking speed records left and right here in the valley. Ammon, he had the kindest heart. He had like that rough look, the you know, speaking like a pirate. But he was like one of the kindest people I've ever met. You know, I know his whole family. Last year I was there for his memorial. I was once again. I was like really sad when he died because he was like another one that was a big part of the scene here when I first showed up, and he was already crushing with climbing. Eamon and I, like other than just regular like long trad routes, like going to Tuolumne. He loved going to Tuolumne, even though a lot of people like think that Eamon and I like we don't free climb. We just like we're big wall climbers. That's kind of like how we made our names, but we loved going up there and just like jumping in the river whenever like the the pass opened. He was the first person to show me Tuolumne, and I was always here. Like I didn't even know of the existence of the upper part of the valley because I was so attracted to the big walls and whatever was happening down here. But yeah, Ammon, he also has like a lot of like close call stories. He lost his leg base jumping in Moab, Utah years ago. And then Eamon and I, we were like that first generation after Dean that we said like we want to learn how to base jump. Like, and we asked Dean like, would you teach us? Would you show us how to do it? And it wasn't like even like Dean that taught us. Like the person that taught us like how to base jump was Chris McNamara. He became also like a good friend, and he was base jumping a lot at the time. So he just took the time to teach, like spend time at the drop zone in Davis. And he said like, yeah, you guys have some jumps now out of the plane. Let's go to the bridge in Idaho. So Chris was the one that took us to Idaho to take our first steps. But yeah, Ammon, this like specific story, it was beginning of COVID. I was in the valley. I had just gotten back from my annual trip to Brazil. I was hanging out in the meadow. There wasn't like a whole lot of people out here. And by the time I showed up, they were already climbing. I think they were up at Mammoth Ledges or something. So it's like, I know they're like a party of three. He was climbing with his son, Austin, and and this other kid named Hayden. And he was going to show Hayden how to aid climb and spend time on big walls, with the whole like vertical camping. And Eamon liked to drink a lot. So on that trip, they took like 120 cans of King Cobra, and they ran out of beer like when they got up to Gray Ledges, like a third of the way. And I'm like three people drinking like 120 cans of King Cobra. Like, were you like, what were you doing up there? So apparently they came down, because they could still reach the ground with the heart ropes, and they came and brought more beer and blasted, like it went all the way up. So, like whenever they didn't really know I was gonna come up and to the top and hike these sledges and meet up with them. So I found some ropes that people stash up there, and I dropped down to take some pictures with my iPhone and surprise them. They were like on a picture two to the top. So when he saw me, he was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here." I think they spent like 9 days on the wall.
Mm.
I think they got caught on a storm, like a couple of days. I brought a couple of bottles of wine, to cheer them up, and I was gonna help them with carrying the gear down, knowing Eamon had like a prosthetic leg. Like, it's just like a hike for me, and I was planning on spending the night up there, making a fire, and then next day we'd regroup, pack everything up, and come down. As he was going for the last pitch on the mirror, they climbed the mirror wall, and I climbed that with my wife,
Mm.
for our honeymoon. She never climbed the wall. She wanted to go up there, so it's like, yeah, let's go on a camping trip. So that was in 2000 and
Mhm.
2009. But anyway, going back to Ammon's story, as I watch him doing like this tension traverse to go to another crack system, I couldn't really see him anymore. He was around the corner. And then he started like yelling and screaming, "Fuck, fuck, fuck!" And I heard this noise. It sounded like a body falling into like the wall. But he kept like screaming. And it's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
Mhm.
And he said like, "I just lost my leg." It's like took a 3,000-foot whipper. So since I was on a uh set of fixed
Mm.
ropes, I rigged to take pictures of them from above. I re-rigged the ropes, threw him the rope I was using, helped him out, and helped his son and Hayden to haul the rest of the gear to the rim. And that night, I was going to spend the night, and I ended up hiking down. So, like, I at least need to find a pair of crutches
Mhm.
for Ammon to go down these ledges because he didn't have his prosthetic. So, like, I spent a night down here, and when I next morning I was gonna come to El Portal, actually to Heather's house. She said like, "Yeah, I got a pair of crutches for you." I stopped on El Cap Meadow, and it's just something clicked, and it's like, I'm gonna hike to the base before I go to El Portal,
Mm.
thinking like never gonna find the leg, and if I find it, it's just gonna be shattered to pieces. So I went to the base, and the leg was there, 3 feet from the base of the climb.
Wow.
So I grabbed the leg, and that same day, he needed the leg, so someone had to go up there again and hand him his leg. So I just went back these sledges, and when he saw me, he couldn't believe either first of all, that I found the leg, or that I actually took the time, just to go give him the leg. So I just put some of, split the gear, and I carried some of their gear down. Shortly after that, they left. I got to see him on a climbing trip I took to Moab Indian Creek
Mhm.
once, and he was there still
Mhm.
skydiving and actively base jumping with with the prosthetic. It didn't really seem to bother him. Uh, but yeah, I think that was the last time I saw him.
Yeah, Ammon was incredible. And thank you for sharing that story with Ammon. One other story I want to hear from you, Nick, is about your ex wife.
Hmm.
You met your ex wife base jumping, I believe. And then, quite sadly,
Skydiving, base
yes,
jumping.
yes. And then, unfortunately, you also lost her in the same type of
Yes.
in the same sport. But before we do that, you
Hmm.
took your wife and you mentioned this, the Muir Wall, I think. So it seemed like,
Yeah.
yes, many people will not take their partner for a honeymoon trip up El Capitan. I want to ask
Yeah.
you, did she have a climbing background? Or how did she adapt to getting up on a big wall without climbing background?
So Allison, she grew up like around the Gunks. She grew up like in Hyde Park, Poughkeepsie area, probably like a half an hour drive to the Gunks, and she went to school in Boone, North Carolina. And then she moved to California, and she was always interested on climbing, also read a lot of the literature, but never really had anyone to take her. She grew up with this other guy. He was already base jumping and pretty active dude that they were same age and grew up with her. That their dream was to like climb and jump El Cap. And according to her, she shared the story because like when I met her, he also died on a base jumping accident in Norway. So that impacted it. The loss of like a really close friend, same age, they've known each other, their families had known each other for years before they were even born. Got connected with the same types of sport. She was like to do stuff that boys do. She liked to ride bikes and rock climb, be out in nature, and yeah, ride horses. Then when she moved out here, she was still pretty new to climbing, especially like big wall climbing. But I said like, yeah, I've been there a bunch of times. I know how to take care of you. Climbing with their partner sometimes can be like quite an experience because you say what you need to say, and sometimes don't go. Those things don't go. Like speaking your
Yes,
truth.
yes, yes. That is correct. Yes.
So you know, it was one of her favorite stories that I made her cry a couple of times, and we almost got divorced. I think 4 times, if I'm correct, in our honeymoon up El Cap. It was funny, but we made it up there
Hey, sorry, but the problem with trying to get divorced on LCAP is you still need to
to
finish
finish the
getting to the
climb.
top.
Yeah, she didn't have a base rig with her on the portal edge. There was like no way to escape. Yeah, that's how we met. We met at the drop zone. We had mutual friends. We connected right away, and I feel like I was still a tourist here in 2008 and had to leave for visa purposes, not to let my visa expire. So I was spending 3 months here, and then I was gone for a month and a half, 2 months, and then she said like she was the one that told me like, look, I can't really do this like month on month off thing. If you really want to like be with me, we should get married, and so you can stay here and we can start a life together. So we were living at the drop zone with both of our dogs, River and Chloe, packing parachutes. That's how we made a living. She used to like when I met her, she used to live in at a house. She had like a was renting a house in Auburn, close to the Forest Hill Bridge. That's one of the big reasons she moved out there to live close to a base jumping object. After we met, I think like 6 months later, she packed her stuff and I put everything in storage and came to the drop zone to live in a tent with me and the dog and pack parachutes.
Mm,
So she was
mm,
also committed to her path. You know, she wasn't really
mhm,
afraid of like,
mhm,
am I gonna make money? Am I not gonna make money? She just met me, and we seemed to be a good match. You know, understood each other's needs, and we got married here at Cathedral Beach. I got to meet her parents
mhm,
the day of the wedding. But yeah, it was like a beautiful celebration. Ammon was here, Hayden Kennedy, Dave Turner. Because a lot of like local
mhm,
people. You know, we didn't really like people that drove from
mhm,
Davis
mhm,
from the drop zone to be here on our special day. And Allison, just continuing the story, not that long after we climbed El Cap, we knew we were gonna have to make some money at the drop zone, and we said like, yeah, let's gonna take like a 2 month trip to Europe, you know. So it was kind of like still the extension of our honeymoon, and that's when the accident happened, and she had like a cliff strike, and unfortunately, like got beat up too much, and ended up dying on that accident. I was lucky enough to have like a lot of friends that I made like when I lived in Italy that supported me, you know, with the whole legal, going to the consulate, embassy, doing the whole death certificate thing. My friends like Georgia and
mhm,
Michele, they're just amazing people that I don't really get to talk to them a whole lot, but they're like family to me. They've
mhm,
been in like moments in my life that I'm like forever thankful, you know. Yeah, just had to cremate her and come back to the US without her, you know, and for her mom and her dad. I can only imagine, you know, like saying like you guys were just here 2 weeks ago because we flew from California to New York, hung out with her
mhm,
family, and then we
mhm,
took off on that trip, and then coming back and
mm,
without her it was like heavy, you know. And it was heavy for 2 years. It was really, really heavy. I
mhm,
just was really having a hard time finding purpose, you know, right? Like at the beginning where we decided to start our life together and you see everything like crumble. But you know, the friends we made, like the skydivers, the climbing community, they were
mhm.
nothing but supportive, being included, you know. When I was still in Italy dealing with that, when he found out, he sent me a message saying like, look, you can always call me, I'm here for you. Like, fucking sucks. So yeah, not like specifically Dean, but like the just so many people that I spend
True.
hours here to mention their names, that I'm also forever thankful for their help and support and for being a part of my life.
One other person actually that I realized I think we both knew or had in common was Fernando Mota.
Oh yeah, Fernando, Mr. Mota.
So, yeah, I met Fernando while
Uh-huh.
climbing at Jailhouse around between 2006 and
Yeah.
2009. And Fernando and I think
Ra-
his wife
Rachel.
or girlfriend,
Yeah.
Rachel, yeah, they would show up with their dog. And Fernando was incredible. One thing that I think everybody loved about Fernando is Jailhouse, you have to show up at the
Mm.
crag early morning because
Okay.
the sun hits the crag. And yeah, so that's just what it is. It's hard climbing. You have to get there early. Fernando would show up at like 11,
Yeah, he
something
wasn't.
something late, smoking a cigarette. Yeah. But I mean, he sent this really hard line. He sent like a
Yeah.
14B, I think, in the blazing sun. I mean, he was an incredible athlete.
Yeah, he I'm not surprised because I also met Fernando here on my very first year in Yosemite, and that guy was like we connected, and because we were both living in a different country and being able to speak the same language and connecting with the same type of activities. Like when I first met him, he went up to the freerider, and he's never done Astroman, neither the rostrum, like which are like, you know, like
Stepping
building
stones,
up
yeah.
to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
stepping
Yeah.
stones. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he's like went straight up and worked like the upper pitches of the freerider and sent it, and that guy was a beast. He used to work at the climbing gym, setting
Yep. Yep.
routes
Yeah.
uh from like Monday through Friday, and he would come to Yosemite or Jailhouse or Lake Tahoe just to climb some more. Like his funny accent, like my friends Clay and Corbin, they can really make a really good impression of Fernando saying, "Right on, dude, right on." But yeah, that guy like climbed super hard, and then when he got into base jumping, and he was one of the other people, like him and Brian Cork. Do you know Brian Cork? He
He
was
sounds
also setting
familiar.
routes. He used to set routes with Fernando. Brian was like already jumping, and then Fernando
Mm,
said like, I gotta do this too, I've always wanted to do. So Brian took him under his wings, and then Fernando just started doing it, and just he would come to the valley and just jump his ass off, like knowing the risk. Yeah, he was a brother to me. Like he when he died, I was also really sad. When my wife died, he was someone that like came to the drop zone and took me on climbing trips where he was trying to cheer me up. He died, I think, like 3 years after Allison
mm,
died. But yeah, he was such a great friend. Like a couple of like other Brazilians, Eduardo Carvalho, that lived in Bishop for a long time, and we were
mm.
all like, like the family we didn't have here in the States. Like we were
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
that close. So for us, it was really hard to lose Fernando.
Yeah, like you, I also grew up in a foreign country, and I found brotherhood and bonding with the climbing community in the US, and it's
Yeah.
been amazing. But I certainly feel like if I meet another Indian climber, I kind of go a little crazy because I'm like, oh my God,
Mhm.
I can have I can have somebody who I relate to, culturally,
Mhm.
and then also share this incredible experience. Yeah, it is crazy. And yeah, I heard about Fernando passing, and I was not that close to him, but it affected me because his energy and his love for the sport, it was so infectious.
Mhm.
I want to ask you this question that I've been pondering for a while. You have lost a lot of friends and loved ones. You likely also experienced PTSD after your own accident.
Mhm.
How did you process those experiences, Nick? And what have you learned about just being strong and resilient and having the mental health in the face of repeated trauma?
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together: training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, I feel like I should have over the years. It's probably like it's never over. So I feel like it's something I'll have to deal with it for the rest of my life. It's definitely like not as hard as it used to be. How depressed I got, and I didn't really, I wasn't really psyched to do much, you know. Once again, I think like having like a good sense of community, all the friends I made to help me the same way I helped a lot of people, you know. So I'm helping these other people, sharing or like just being there for them. Even like sometimes like when we go through these big losses, you know, like tragic moments in our lives, sometimes like we don't even need anyone to say anything. We just want to be silent, just have someone by our side, you know. So, and I had friends, you know. I also had people that I'm sure they meant their best, but you know, like that you're like tell you something. I'm sure they wanted to be supportive, but it's not what you want to hear at the time, you know. So it's no one's fault. And so with the resilience, I feel like just like being active, and I try to go through all these losses. You know, I like to drink, but like just as clear headed as I possibly could, you know, because I didn't want to really like fall into like being more depressed and think about what happened or the ifs and coulds or shoulds. It just happened, you know, and we chose to be there. That's why I was so honest with Allison, and also talked to Fernando and had like some conversations about death and the possibility of dying, you know, because we've had friends that died before. So here I am with the person I chose to be a part of my life for however long, and she dies. So I feel like also having that honesty, it made like things a little bit easier. It's not that like it helps, it kind of helps, but you understand me, like it's still gonna go through the heavy times. But I feel like that's knowing where we were putting ourselves, you know. In the base jumping is one of the riskiest, like the highest fatality rate in the world as a sport, you know. And there we were like flying wingsuits. Like I never really like, I was never super psyched on jumping here in the valley. So I also, after Allison died, I I didn't really want to skydive anymore. I just, because we built too many memories like at that drop zone together. I just needed like my
Mm,
space to heal away from that, you know, away
mhm,
from the
mhm,
memories. I just wanted, I knew I was gonna carry the memories in my head, but just the physical
mhm,
part of being there, I feel like that was going to be beneficial for my healing and traveling and just going to different places, breathe fresh air and new air. So I got a job working as a rope access technician, which is like my main gig. Still to this day, I just was taking a lot of trips to Europe. My first job was working on offshore wind turbines off the coast of Denmark. That's
mm,
kind of like another path I took, you know, just to change it up. And I never really thought about it. Like Allison was like definitely really supportive because we had the
mm,
same, we were packing parachutes side by side. Sometimes we were like getting into each other's nerves, you know, like, and we didn't even had the time to say like, "Oh, how was your day?" Like I knew how her day was because it was like probably like shooting her with rubber bands, you know,
mhm,
and packing parachutes, and just
mm,
at the end of the day going skydiving together. And then she said like, "Yeah, we should like try to at least find different jobs, and
mhm,
if you want to like to make this like a lasting relationship." But Then I started doing rope access. She was still working at the drop zone, shooting video from like people doing tandems, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I feel like that's I've always been like super resilient, you know, and with things I wanted in life, and I've always like gotten after it. It's like if it's in front of me, it's gonna have like I never chosen the easiest path with anything, you know.
Hmm.
Just life in general, like just losing this amount of people, it wasn't easy. But I've been learning with it, you know, until it's my turn, which it wasn't like 9 years ago. I'm grateful that I got these 9 extra years on me that I should have been paralyzed, and because you know I spent 2 weeks at the hospital fighting for my life. I broke my sternum, two ribs, punctured a lung, had a pneumothorax, vertebrae compressed and broke to the point that the doctors don't really know how that didn't affect my spinal cord. So it's like you're lucky because we went there. You placed the two titanium rods, the 10 screws, holding the five vertebrae together, five on each side, and I got out of there like you know like walking. And people sometimes they ask me like, does it affect you the mobility? A little bit, but I do everything I used to do. Just decided not to base jump anymore. You know.
Do you have any, yeah, any residual like physical pain? Do you have like a physiotherapy practice that you have to keep up with? Because your list of injuries is extensive.
Yeah. I don't. I was always like super bad, you know. I could have I mean if I took the time just to live around a climbing gym and actually like do a little bit of like cross training or whatever training climbers do, I'd have been like a way better climber, but like I'm too lazy. So
Yeah, no, hey, you have to follow your path,
I
you know?
yeah, I just like, you know, I live in my van. I do have like a fingerboard and a pull apart and some bands I just work on my mobility with. But besides that, I just like to climb and travel.
You
Yeah.
mentioned one thing, you started drinking more, I think after Allison passed or other people
No.
passed. Is that correct? Was that like kind of dangerous?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I started drinking when I was like young, you know, at a young age. But you know, when you're a kid, sometimes like you drink way more than you should. And then, but like, I think you got me wrong there. When I lost Allison, a lot of my other friends, I just wanted to go through like as clear headed as possible, you know, just to think properly, not to have like the effects of alcohol, like just get any type of change of behaviors or like cause any harm to myself, you know, because you know sometimes when you're drunk and you're thinking bad thoughts, like you're like so sensitive to different things. A lot of people ended up like killing themselves for that reason. You know, they lost their partner, they didn't really know how to deal with these things. I had a couple of friends when they lost their partners, it was the same way. You know, they were completely lost, including um my friend Sean Leary. Like he was dating like one of my best friends. We were both from the same state, and like a lot of the people I met, the climbing community in Brazil, they ended up like finding out about me on that year of 2004 that I wasn't even trying like to say like, oh, here I am, I'm spraying, you know. But since the climbing community at the time was like a lot smaller and I knew some people that had accomplished a lot, they said like what you've done, like no other Brazilians have done that, you know. So when Roberta came to the States, like that season, we really connected, you know, and she was a sister to me and she wanted to stay. She was also following her dreams.
Mm-hmm.
and she ended up like getting together with Stanley, and they both had like
Mm-hmm.
similar dreams. And she,
Mm-hmm.
as adventurous as she was, she ended up like dying on a car accident, dying on his arms. She was a big part of this place too. It was really hard. You probably watched the piece they made when they went to down to Patagonia to spread her ashes. So it was really hard. Another hard one. And Roberta and Fernando, they had known each other for a long time. So it feels like
Oh.
the family was just getting bigger and bigger because we were
Oh
here for
wow.
each other. So
Yeah, I mean, I haven't met a lot of Brazilian climbers. I guess I have when traveling overseas, but I haven't met a lot
hmm
of Brazilian climbers in California, and maybe also climbers who climb at that high level and who are so dedicated to the sport. I can only imagine how special the community is for all of you. At the end of Eric's podcast with you, I think I,
uh-huh.
yeah, I think I remember hearing that you were going to try some new things,
Yeah.
psychedelics, maybe
Uh-huh.
ayahuasca, where maybe you would go to Peru and do some of that stuff. Did you do that?
hmm I never went to Peru. I actually want to take a climbing trip to Peru. And if that calls my name, I'm not opposed to it. But I'm not the type of guy that I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Let me schedule like an ayahuasca retreat. I feel like psychedelics as a therapeutical and guided way to do it helped me. I have a friend that she helps me a lot with these guided meditations I like to call, and it's really beneficial. I don't really see any harm on doing that. I try to do it like once every 6 months and just connect to myself and my soul and find purpose. But it's not like necessarily like also like sometimes I go a year without doing it.
Can you tell us a bit more, Nick, on how that ceremony is? Are you taking
Psil-
psilocybin
Psilocybin, yeah.
mushrooms or is it something
Psilocybin, yeah.
else? If somebody was trying to process trauma or healing, like how would that person go about with that kind of healing meditation that you undertake?
So when I'm like guided through these things and I go in with like the right intention. I actually write my intentions of why I'm doing before I start.
Mm,
It's just like going to like this deep meditative deep state of mind, you know. I don't know. This is from what I heard because I never used that as like to go on a party or go on a hike, or I strictly use it that way, which I'm not saying like people who use it their own way, it's wrong or right. I just like saying from my own experience, the visuals and the sounds for sure they're there, but like they become like secondary from the amount of like healing and how open I am to the medicine. So that's how it works for me. And sometimes not even during the when I'm in there for those 5 hours. Sometimes like we're debriefing and the effects of the medicine, are running out, and I'm just like cry, and like I feel like all those emotions are being released. Once again, not
mm-hmm,
necessarily like it happened to
mm-hmm,
me several times. The first times I was really like holding back, so I wasn't really like letting the medicine to act.
mm,
So it's just for
mm.
me, not always like during the ceremony. It's after. But it's really beneficial. I find like I
Yeah.
I don't even like, oh, what's gonna happen. Like I just feel like things start flowing a little bit better, and I start like organizing my life in a different way without even
Mm-hmm,
trying, like
mm-hmm,
just instinctively. That's how I've always acted. Like it's like if I want to
mm,
go, I go, like this last couple of years that I
Mm,
decided to spend a lot of time in Patagonia. I know the place requires a lot of time to be immersed in that with those mountains and getting used to the energy of that place. So I just told myself I was gonna go for 3 months. So I spent 3 months down there. Like my first season, I
mm,
didn't really accomplish that much. Like this past season, we went like got to go up
mm.
like a couple of like dream peaks that I've always wanted to climb, and it happened.
Nick, want to talk a little bit about some of
Hmm.
your future goals. But one thing I want to ask you is a question that I often get asked. I've been in this country since 99,
Yeah,
so
a
about
while
25
ago.
years, kind of a super long time. Yeah, I've lived longer in the US now than
Same
anywhere else.
here.
Do you think you will ever move back
I got
to
so
Brazil?
used to the life here. I won't say like never, you know. My dad, like he's 76 now, and again, you know, as he gets older, I might like want to spend instead of like a trip a year, I might like want to go and spend like more time with him. I also have a 6 year old nephew, my sister. I try to go once a year, but I feel like it's for me to be a part of their lives. It's a far away country to visit, you know. It requires like a 24-hour trip
Mm-hmm.
and to go 24 hours to come back. But I'm always making a point to talk to them, if not on a daily basis, every other day to check in, see how they're doing. And when it comes to, so like to answer your question, I don't really think I'd move back to Europe because I feel like pretty I'm okay here. You know, I found my place and found a sense of community. With my future goals, I just want to keep climbing and moving around. I want to move around as much as I can while my body, you know, my broken body allows me to. Yeah, it's just being here. I spend most of my year here. I'm going to a trip to the Bugaboos this season with Eric. Last year,
Mm, mm,
myself, my friend Felipe from Chile is a really talented photographer,
mm,
long distance runner, accomplished climber. He lives in Colorado, so that's how he got to meet Eric. And they were looking for a third person to go on this climbing trip. So we got to go to the Lotus Flower Tower last year, which was like a dream
mm,
come true for me. I never really like put a whole lot of effort, you know, like once they invited me, I put like, you know, as much
mm,
effort as I could to make the trip happen. But I wasn't like, oh, let's meet this guy, let's make the network because I know he's going there, you know. It's just like it presented itself. And we Felipe was here in Yosemite at the time, and we got on a call with Eric. And I've known, once again, I've all these people, my climbing heroes. Eric was also on Masters of Stone back in the day, climbing with Hugh Herr and Mark Wellman on Ancient Art, you know.
mhm, mhm,
And so I've known of Eric since I started climbing, but getting to meet him and connecting with him in a way, like becoming his friend, it was amazing. He actually has like a pretty inspiring film. He's an inspiring human, but they just released his new film, Soundscape. I don't know if you got to watch it at the Outside Festival in Colorado. I don't know if he was there. I think he was there with me.
I heard about the movie and maybe they screened it. I don't know, but I certainly want to watch it. Yeah, I want to watch that.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's on Real Rock for people that want to watch. For me, it's one of the best climbing films I've seen lately, just because it has depth to it. The Sometimes I have a hard time like watching climbing films because It's just like they talk about themselves and it's just like I think I gotten old. Maybe I'm getting too old too, and I'm getting picky.
Yeah, yeah. No, I want to watch it also because Sarah is a friend of mine. And
Nice.
I've been trying to link up with Timmy to get him on the show as well. I mean, Timmy keeps a busy schedule, so that hasn't happened. But I will,
Uh,
eventually watch the movie and also have Timmy on the show and hopefully Eric on the show as well, because Eric is
yeah,
he's been a source of, he's crazy, he's incredible. Yeah, he's incredible.
incredible.
So no, I
Like kayaking the whole length of the Grand Canyon as a blind person. Who does that? Who even like? It's like I can understand the climbing. You can manage the risks a lot more,
yes.
but like dealing with white water for that amount of time and for how I'm not familiar with white water, but it has its grades, like, and I think it's like a grade 4.
Uh,
So I don't really know the specifics, but just the fact that he's putting himself out there with a headset and some radios and relying on other people. I'm sure he's using other things,
mhm.
but he's on a kayak with it by himself.
No, I have done just
That
enough
guy.
kayaking to know absolutely how wild that could be. Yeah, no. Anyway, that could be a whole other podcast just talking about Eric. going back to you,
Right.
Nick. Yeah, just a couple of final questions. It's been an amazing conversation. What might be some habits, routines, or behaviors that have most impacted you in the last few years?
I feel like the routine of like getting myself out of bed and staying active. I get when I go into like slug mode that I lose motivation, and then I don't come up like with a new thing to do or like use this place I have it on my background to have fun. I just tend to like my thoughts I get wrapped around in thought that are not necessarily that good for me. So I've been trying to just like stay active and stay
Sure.
as stay away from trouble with myself mostly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And actually, yeah, no. So this is one question I wanted to ask about, like mental blocks. You have been climbing for a very long time, and you've seen all kinds of ups and
Mhm.
downs. What keeps you psyched about climbing? And I ask this because I know that I'm. It's hard for me to get better with whatever average grades I climb, and sometimes the act of climbing sometimes feels a little bit exhausting because it becomes a job. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious, somebody who's
Yeah.
dedicated, you know, their whole life to climbing, what keeps you, what strategies have you found that have helped you stay stoked?
I don't really like think too much about it. Like there's like strategies or what I'm gonna have for breakfast. Sometimes like I'm really bad at eating. Like I've been trying to eat healthier, but sometimes like I have like a piece of bread or cookies for breakfast, and a cup of coffee. So I've been trying to like eat more and eat healthier because that's like gonna affect my long term health. To tell you the truth, I just like waking up and psyching myself on a daily basis, like connect with people that think alike and should start reading some more. I listen to a lot of like audiobooks because I'm
Mm.
really bad at reading. So I've been trying to listen like on longer trips. Been trying to get to know. Think I'm halfway through Eric's book now, No Barriers. And
Mm.
he talks about the whole Grand Canyon adventure. But yeah, just connecting to people and just keep on living day after day without really expecting much of life, because it's just a way not to get like not to be too hard on myself and definitely like coming up with different goals. Like I said, I have this bugaboos
Mm.
trip and I want to like try to climb as much as I can here in Yosemite. and go back to Patagonia. So I'm fit enough to have these goals and being able to accomplish them.
You stopped base jumping many years ago, which I thought was probably like a
Not nine, yeah.
foil to climbing, maybe balanced, like to have two different sports. Have you found something to replace base jumping? Do you have any other hobby that you do? I don't know if you play music or something else that keeps you balanced.
No, I feel like, even when Allison died, I told myself I wasn't really going to quit base jumping. And I jumped for another 5 years of my life, uh, still losing friends, a lot of friends. But yeah, I think once I had that near death experience, I just decided to call it good. And I actually sold my gear because it's such an addicting type of activity that I knew that if I had my parachute under my bed, some people like say it's just like having a needle,
Oh, wow.
uh, that you're gonna go back. So I sold it, put it in my hand, told myself that I wasn't gonna do that anymore. There's no need, even though I'm capable and I have the health. I just don't need to go through that. I just actually got away. Like my good friends stayed, like from the base jumping community, but I lost touch with the community itself just because I got tired of like, oh, I heard someone else died. This happens sometimes, like multiple times in a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I went back to climbing, and I've been trying to not necessarily like big wall climbing like I used to, because I also don't really feel the need to like expose myself to those type of risks. Like when it comes to like A5 routes and deadly routes on whatever. But I've been like trying to replace that with like more like getting the nose dialed so I can get it under like 10 hours,
Mm-hmm.
which for me,
Mm-hmm.
with this broken body, I think it's going to be like a huge accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
The other day I did it with my friend Sam. It's the second time I climbed the nose in a day, and then we did it in 12 hours. And I feel like I have a lot to learn, but also like I'm not that far from my goal, which is not like something that I put it in my head that I want to break any record. I just want to have fun and keep climbing.
Absolutely. Nick, fun question here. What's been the best use of $100 that you've had in the last recent memory? Doesn't have to be the exact number, but yeah.
Just specific $100. I don't know. For me, like I've been spending my money lately on like buying plane tickets to go to different places, which it costs a lot more than $100. But the best use of my money, besides like eating healthy food, and then it's just money is just a piece of paper. If my friends need money, I've I help them out,
Mm-hmm.
and if I have uh, to spare, just yeah, I think traveling to different places, and Patagonia got me these past couple of years, and I'm going back. So I feel like once again it's like a lot more than $100,
Sure.
but uh that's how I'm making good use of my money.
Awesome. I know that you are a private person, Nick, but if people want to learn more about you, which they will once they hear this podcast, how can they do that?
I mean, I have my Instagram, Nicola Martinez, with two Z's because I couldn't find, there was already taken with the one Z.
Mm-hmm.
My full name, Nicola Martinez, with two Z's. I try to have one type of social media. I feel like I've already spent way too much time scrolling these days. I need to stop with that. I'd accomplish a lot more when I do. That's basically it. Text message me and email me, but most like just send me a message on Instagram. I'll be happy to reply.
We will put the link to your Instagram. on in the show notes if somebody needs to find it.
Yeah.
Nick, have a great rest of the season in Yosemite, and for your trip to the Bugaboos this year, we'll be following your adventures. It's been amazing to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so candid and for sharing your stories. You will be inspiring people for some time to come.
Yeah. Thank you, Kush. I was listening to Kate McConnell's, and I love the style of the podcast and how thought provoking the questions are, and just like you give us like, how podcasts are. Sometimes we don't like necessarily answer like that specific question, but try to like fill in as the feelings go through, like, like our bodies and minds, and like, once again, not necessarily answering to your specific questions. Sometimes if I'm not direct to the point or as sharp as I was supposed to. I wish you like a lot of success, and you're already having a lot of success on this podcast. I'm looking forward to listening to more episodes, and hope Timmy and Eric and some more inspiring people can come into the show. And thank you for inspiring us. And I would like at some point like would like to have a conversation and kind of understand like what got you here, and then that's just another conversation for a different time. But thanks for, and if you're ever in Yosemite, like hit me up. We'll get out and climb and have a lot of fun.
More than anything else, that's what I would most look forward to, Nick. Nick's raving quest to continue chasing his dreams, even in the face of immense loss and personal setbacks, makes him such a good fit for Ageless Athlete. His journey reminds us to embrace life's adventures, find strength in community, and never give up on the passions that light us up, even when the path is shadowed by loss. Some key takeaways I found: even seasoned climbers like Nick started as bug-eyed beginners, fueled by dreams and inspired by the legends who came before them. There is a fine line between pushing your limits and courting recklessness. And even the most experienced adventurers must be able to navigate that. Nick backed off base jumping after all those losses. Embrace the dirtbag spirit. This is a favorite one. There is something liberating about simplifying your life, focusing on what's key, and finding joy in the basics. And then finally, it is okay to grieve in your own way. There is no right way or wrong way to process loss. Give yourself time, space, and compassion. There you have it, folks. I am touched, and I will carry the lessons and Nick's story with me for a long time. Hope it affected you just as much as it affected me. And again, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow Nick on Instagram. Links will be on the show notes. And also keep your eyes peeled for the video that will follow soon on YouTube. And get out there, stay healthy, stay focused, enjoy the outdoors in any capacity that you have. Stay ageless, my friends. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from amidst in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through prior episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.